Notice the materials or the objects that you have seen in the screen. What have you observed? What are the different objects? Among these household materials, which do you consider as toxic substance and hazardous waste? Maybe some of you have answered kerosene, pesticides, motor oil, battery, or cleaning chemicals. Well, let us see if your answers are correct along as we discover our lesson. What you don't know will not hurt you. It is often a saying that you heard from your peers. However, it is not always a good advice when it comes to toxic substance and hazardous waste. Why is that? With the present progress in industrialization, waste generation has been increasing rapidly in the Philippines. Lead in drinking water, muriatic acid in your bathroom, discarded e-waste, pesticides, and cleaning chemicals are just several examples that are potentially dangerous to you, to occupational safety, to community health, and the environment. By understanding how you can reduce your exposure to chemicals and hazardous waste, it can reduce your risk of harmful health effects. So, what is Republic Act 6969? This program of the DNR, or the Department of Environmental Natural Resources, provides the controlling and regulation of sound and proper management of industrial chemicals and hazardous waste in all aspects of its cycle, from transportation, use, and prohibits disposal into the Philippine territorial limits for whatever purpose. It also provides advancements and facilitates research and studies on toxic chemicals.
And now, let's find out the history of Republic Act No. 6969. It is enacted by the Senate President Jovito R. Salongs and House of Representatives Ramon V. Metra of the Philippines in Congress. It was approved on October 26, 1990 under the presidency of Corazon Cory Aquino. Now, let's move on to the characteristics of hazardous waste. Toxicity: poisonous or acute and having carcinogenic, teratogenic, or mutagenic effect on human or other organisms. Ignitability: can create fire under certain conditions, for example, include liquids such as solvents that readily catch fire and friction substances. Corrosivity: acidic or basic capable of corroding metals by chemical action, can cause severe damage when in contact with living tissue. Reactive: ways that 1. Are stable under normal condition and readily undergo violent change without detonating. 2. React violently with water and create spontaneously explosive mixtures like toxic gases, vapor, fumes, and 3. Capable of detonating. Here are the examples of hazardous waste. Corrosive: batteries, drain cleaners, and oven cleaners. Toxic: pesticides, rat poison, pharmaceuticals, and cleaning fluids. Reactive: bulk chemicals, ammonia, bleach, and aerosols. Flammable: paint, solvents, oil, gasoline, BBQ starter, and propane cylinders.
Using or exposing to chemicals as well as the long-term harm caused by careless management and disposal of hazardous waste and chemicals puts the society and environment in danger, even from local flora and fauna to even our food resources. Here are the social and environmental issues that are being experienced under the RA 6969. First, we have the groundwater or the contamination, or it pollutes the drinking water supplies. Second, it also affects food supplies, wherein toxic pesticides are taken up by crops, grazing by animals, and passerby. We also have air pollutants, wherein toxic chemicals may be released to their foods. Another issue under the social problem is the health security, the occupational safety, especially those who works in the factories and in creating those chemicals and substances. They are at risk. And we also have the women and children safety, who are typically exposed to daily hazardous household materials, especially to those generator of hazardous waste, as some of the household materials such as the cleaning agent, the bleach, the muriatic acid are some of the examples of the hazardous waste that they can be exposed if they do not know how to handle them properly. Since RA number 6969 was approved on October 1998, there was a surrounding issues regarding its implementation. It was not being strictly implemented in localities. They have also limited budget for toxic substances and hazardous waste disposal facility, since not all the LGUs have their own materials recovery facility and sanitary landfill. Aside from that, one of the problem also was the lack of information and dissemination. Even I, when we were given this topic, it was my first time in hearing about this law regarding the Toxic Substance, Hazardous, and Nuclear Waste Control Act. So it's really important to let the localities or even the schools be aware of this act so they could protect themselves and also to avoid the risks, especially those who are in the working sector of these chemical substances.
Do you have any idea on what is the interaction between human population and the ecosystem? We are all aware that as the population of the world has grown, so does its impact on the environment. The ingenuity with which we, as humans, make and build things or products to meet our needs contributes to a variety of environmental issues. As the population grows, so do the demands and the waste product, and as a result, do the quantities of dangerous substances. The toxic and hazardous waste contain dangerous properties and often produce a severe influence on human health and the environment. The majority of trash classified as hazardous comes from chemical industry and hospitals. What efforts are done to solve this problem? Lands are now protected against contamination by law. This is where the Toxic Substances and Hazardous and Nuclear Waste Control Act of 1990, also known as Republic Act number 6969, came into effect.
Resolution for the issues of toxic substances, hazardous, and nuclear waste. 1. Improve enforcement of Republic Act number 6969. 2. Involve small industries and institutions like schools, barangays, and healthcare providers. 3. Give incentives and rewards to those with hazardous waste management system. 4. Stricter penalties for violators. 5. Strengthen and promote research and development on hazardous waste management. 6. Secure landfills 10 feet or 3-meter separation between the bottom of the landfill and the underlying bedrock or the groundwater table. 7. Segregation of hazardous waste. Yellow trash bin for hazardous waste.
What do we need to do in chemical disposal? The first one is do store hazardous waste in a safe manner before pickup. Hazardous waste cannot be disposed of in a traditional or simple way. Do put up safety signage to warn others about the dangerous waste. Before storing chemicals and waste, naturally, you do not want people touching it or getting exposed. And lastly, do dispose of waste in a safe, appropriate manner. Do some research and find the best way to dispose of gadgets, damaging chemicals, and liquids. Previously, we have the do's in chemical disposal that we discussed. Now, we're going to discuss the don'ts in disposing the chemicals. The first one in our list we have: don't dump hazardous waste in the bin. Why is that so that it doesn't end up poisoning our natural environment. The second one is don't attempt to burn hazardous materials. It's because chemicals and toxic waste can be explosive or flammable. And lastly, don't pour chemicals or solvents down the drain, since pouring chemicals down the drain is a one-way ticket to the ocean. Typically, most of the marine animals live in the ocean. Aside from that, there is a possibility that it will also contaminate our drinking water.
One of the examples is the COVID-19 pandemic. In accordance to Republic Act number 6969, surgical masks are also treated as infectious waste among other healthcare waste. Treated infectious waste are usually end up in waste landfills separated from regular trash. Between the months of April and July 2020, 19,000 metric tons of infectious waste were collected according to DENR. Improperly disposed mass poses a threat to people and the environment as it may contain pathogens. How to properly dispose face masks? 1. Touch only the straps when taking off the mask. 2. Segregate and isolate the mask in a plastic bag. 3. Cut and destroy masks to prevent unchecked reuse. 4. Dispose it with your general household waste, not with the recycling. And 5. Wash your hands after disposing them.
According to the DNR Undersecretary for Policy Planning and International Affairs, Attorney Jonas R. Leonas, he suggested that for those who will be elected into office, they need to focus on assisting LGUs by giving appropriate funding to address the garbage problem and their localities. Similarly, according to the DNR EMB's Hazardous Waste Management Section Chief Gary Sanyas 2022, he is hoping that the next administration and whoever will be the next president will give priority to the draft bill on the amendment of RA number 6969 to institutionalize circular economy and extend producer responsibility, or the APR, for both municipal and domestic solid waste and hazardous waste, as this has not been given priority for more than 2 decades already, and it is constantly being refiled and updated.
To summarize it all, under the Republic Act number 6969 of the Philippines, also known as Toxic Substances and Hazardous and Nuclear Waste Control Act of 1990, the act was carried out to control, supervise, and regulate activities on toxic chemicals and hazardous waste. Violations of this law are punishable. Hence, always store hazardous waste properly while waiting for a suitable disposal method. Disposing hazardous waste through regular rubbish collections is dangerous, whether it ends up in the ground, in the streams, or even in the air. Toxic waste can harm people, animals, and plants, which could lead to environmental, economical, and societal problems. As the old saying, what you don't know can't hurt you, isn't always good advice. When it comes to toxic substances and hazardous waste, what you know can help you. That would be all, and thank you for listening.